we always turn to the Illinois Policy Institute for expertise. This morning is no exception. Michael Lucci's on the line with us right now. Michael, good morning to you.
Good morning. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for being on the show. Quite a piece that you put out there talking about how Illinois lost one resident every 6.5 minutes in 2013. I thought I saw a bunch of people bumping past me on the way to the border.
That's right, and this was actually an all-time rate of exodus from Illinois. So it's a story that needs to be told, but it's not a fun story. But yes, Illinois is losing one resident and $50,000 of taxable income every 6.5 minutes. That's the current pace as of tax year 2013. So there are indicators that it's gone up since then. But throughout Illinois' history, this is the fastest we've ever seen people and income leave the state, is what we saw in tax year 2013.
So, Michael, this is a bit strange because Democratic leaders simply won't acknowledge the problem. Mike Madigan some months ago had said he doesn't think this is really happening. And in fact, last week, John Cullerton, the Senate president, was on Chicago Tonight and echoed the same thing. This is audio from John Cullerton on Chicago Tonight.
His view of how bad off the state is a view that I don't agree with. I think they talk amongst themselves about everybody's going to Florida. You know, instead the state is doing very well in many areas. Corporate headquarters are moving to Chicago because we have a transportation system, we have an educated workforce. Our taxes are dramatically lower now than all the states that are around us. How can we not be competitive?
All right, mainly that first half there, Michael. John Cullerton playing make-believe that Republicans are saying, oh, they're all going to Florida. Well, you know what? A lot of people are going to Florida and Texas and surrounding states. That's what the IRS data show.
Yes, I honestly don't know what universe he's living in. If he's saying that people aren't leaving Illinois and he's saying that the states around us have higher taxes than we have. There are basic facts on both of these issues. The IRS puts out taxpayer migration data, and that's what I looked at in this report. And we're losing people at a faster rate than we've ever lost them before. But let's get specific. When you look at the net losses, so people move to Indiana, and Indiana people move to Illinois, Illinois lost that net trade with every single state in the Midwest, as in we are the only state that loses to everyone in the Midwest. We lost a huge amount of people to Texas. Texas was the state that gained the most people from Illinois on that net trade. And that's a job story. Everybody knows that the Texas economy has been booming, producing so many jobs that not only are they bringing in immigrants across the border for work, they're bringing in migrants from all across the United States, especially places like Illinois, who are going there for work. On his other point about the taxes in Illinois being lower than the taxes around us, I mean, what planet is he living on? Has he not seen Indiana's tax rates? And not just the tax rates, the regulatory environment is less burdensome in all of the states around us. You have a governor out there talking about workers' compensation, tort liabilities, these regulatory and red tape issues that are really tripping up entrepreneurs and small businesses. There are rankings on all of these issues, and on all of these issues, Illinois has the most expensive regulatory burden for workers' compensation, the most red tape for tort liabilities, for the lawsuit climate. So he's just ignoring the issue, but this is not a new thing for Senator Cullerton. He also said a few years ago that we don't have a pension problem. Mm-hmm. They've also been saying that we don't have a jobs problem. These are all real problems. They're coming home to roost, and these guys have overseen these problems for a long time, so they still want to ignore them. You can't ignore the data. The data comes from the IRS, the U.S. Census Bureau, U-Haul, United Van Lines. Anyone who's moving people out of the state or recording the movements of people is seeing the exact same thing. Everyone's saying the same thing across the board. People are leaving Illinois, and they're doing it for better opportunities.
Spending some time with Michael Lucci, Illinois Policy Institute. IllinoisPolicy.org is where you can go to learn more. You also point out a couple of other disturbing things in your piece. Worst employment recovery in the country since the Great Recession, and the only state in the region where more people have begun receiving food stamps than have started jobs since the Great Recession ended.
Right, so this is what's happening here, is people are hitting the wall in Illinois. Everyone wants an opportunity. Everyone wants to work. But those opportunities aren't being produced in Illinois, largely because our tax and regulatory environment. So people are hitting the wall. The ones with means are leaving the state. The ones with means are looking for that opportunity in Texas, Tennessee, Wisconsin, Indiana, wherever it is. And the people without means are being forced onto government dependency. And this is a story that needs to be told. is that we're having more people go on to food stamps than any other state in the Midwest. We now have the largest proportion of our population on food stamps of any state in the Midwest. We just passed Michigan for that. So Michigan used to have a lot of folks on food stamps because they had a really tough time for a while. And now Michigan has changed their policies. Michigan's recovering. And Michigan's food stamp rolls are declining month after month after month, while ours have been consistently rising or holding steady at a high level. So now we have more people on food stamps than any other state in the Midwest. And it's all because we don't have opportunities. And that's where it all ties together. Without jobs, people have to leave the state or they become dependent on the government for their food and for other necessities. That's why the main story is about creating jobs, and that's why, honestly, I think you see a governor down there saying, we need to reform our economic climate because we need jobs. We can't fix anything if we don't have a growing job base, a growing tax base, more people paying taxes, so it makes it easier for everybody.
Michael Lucci with us, Illinois Policy, IllinoisPolicy.org. It's Riley and Scott on WROK. Took property taxes for a moment. That's been a huge issue in the back and forth in Springfield, looking for a property tax freeze, and heard our property taxes are high. Didn't realize exactly how high until I was talking to a friend who had moved out of Illinois, and yes, like many others, I have friends who have moved out of Illinois. Equivalent homes, right? Property taxes where he moved to, 65, 70% less than they are here in Illinois. I could not believe the numbers. Is that common for our surrounding states?
It's very common with surrounding states for two reasons. One, they tax at a lower rate. So that you guys have some high property taxes, sometimes 4 or 5% of the property value gets taxed every year in Rockford. That's true of a lot of places. The south suburbs of Chicago have rates that get up into 8, 9%, really rates where it's confiscation. So the rates in Illinois are very high compared to surrounding states. And then the cost of housing in Illinois is also higher than surrounding states. So you have a higher cost, and then the government's taxing you at a higher rate on that home value. And yes, it ends up being a much higher tax burden than the states around you. So people are able to move to Wisconsin, Indiana, Texas, Missouri, and get a cheaper house that's actually bigger than the one they have in Illinois. And the property tax burden will be 50% lower, 70% lower. That's something that we frequently see, and you could just look at real estate prices across borders if you want to see that. So yes, it's a very real issue. The property taxes in Illinois, and actually where I live in Chicago, are getting so high that they're actually holding down the property value. So once that tax gets too high, it will drive down the property value. We're starting to see that in Chicago. I think you've seen it some in Rockford. We've seen it in the south suburbs here. So it's a huge, huge tax, and it's causing major problems, especially for an industry, say manufacturing, where they own a lot of property. And you see those manufacturers leaving from Rockford. They're leaving from the south suburbs of Chicago. They're leaving from Peoria. Property taxes is a big issue for them.
So, Michael, one of the huge takeaways from your piece here and talking to you now is how really deeply disturbing it is that you have members in high leadership positions denying things that really are undeniable and to the detriment of everybody here.
That's true. I mean, Senator Cullerton lives just up the street from me. He's not too far away. If he ever wanted to go through the data, I'd be more than happy to go through the data, show him exactly what's happening, show him exactly where people are going, how many people are going, why they're leaving for those states. I mean, the data is all on record. The people of Illinois have actually been polled on the issue of, do you want to leave the state? Gallup polling polled the people of Illinois on that issue. A lot of them said they wanted to leave. More than any other state, we had people say they wanted to leave. They're also asked why. The number one reason was economic opportunities. This is not a mystery what's happening here. What's happening is we've had terrible policies for a long period of time. People are not able to find the opportunities. Whether they see it's because of the red tape and the taxes or not, they're just not able to find the opportunities here. And so, as I said, they're hitting the wall. They're either getting out of the state, or if they have less means, they're becoming dependent upon the government for basic necessities like food. It's all a very clear story, and it's very clear what needs to happen, which is we need major economic reforms. We need major tax and spend reforms. And as I said, honestly, we have a governor in there who's banging away on those issues. But if Senator Cullerton ever wants to walk through the data, ever wants a deep dive into it, I'd be more than happy to walk through these things with him. As I said, we're right up the street from each other, and he knows where Illinois Policy Institute is. He's free to call us anytime he wants if he wants to see what the data really looks like.
Michael Lucci, Illinois Policy. Just have about a minute left, but I wanted to ask this. Both Mike Madigan and John Cullerton criticized the governor because they say he's stressing non-budgetary issues when talking about the budget, when the governor's trying to push reforms that will help the jobs environment and help people across Illinois. If we look at just what we lost, 81,000 residents in 2013, $4.1 billion in annual taxable revenue. That's 1 year. If we were able to hold steady over the past 5 years, 7 years, 8 years in terms of population and taxable income, keep it in the state as opposed to having it seep across the border, what would our budget situation look like in Springfield right now?
So if you look at the last 10 years of tax data, you would have about $3.2 billion additional dollars of state plus local tax revenue. So that gets split right about down the middle. You'd have about $3.2 billion more, a little bit more than $3.2 billion more if we'd broken even on migration for the last decade. So, a bunch of people move into Illinois, an equal amount of people move out of Illinois. That's breaking even. If we'd broken even, we'd have about $3.2 billion per year in additional tax revenue at state and local level. If you go back to 1995 and you say we break even since 1995, all that taxable income, you'd have about $8 billion additional tax dollars at state and local level. As I said, that would be split between state and local about evenly. So this is arguably the largest budget issue Illinois faces, is taxpayers leaving the state. You cannot make a budget work if the people who fund the budget are consistently leaving, opting out of paying for that budget because they're looking at a better place to live. This is, in our opinion, the largest budget issue because you have people leaving the state, you have fewer taxpayers. You just can't make that work. So in any state, economic growth is the major driver of the budget. Economic growth can really make a budget easy to happen, and when you have a lack of economic growth, it makes it very hard to make that budget work. We're on that second hand there. We have a lack of economic growth, so every year we have this issue. This year is the first year where the governor said, look, we actually have to have a balanced budget and don't send me one that's not balanced. But every year we have a budget crisis where they're not able to make the numbers work, and then usually they just fudge it and pretend like it's a balanced budget when it's not. But you can't fix the budget if you don't fix your economy. The economy is the whole thing that funds the budget. So there is no bigger budgetary issue than getting the economy fixed.
You're going to want to read more on this one. Go right over to the website, illinoispolicy.org. Read Michael Lucci's piece there. Michael, excellent work on this one. A real eye-opener. Not necessarily all that pleasant, but boy, you really did some fine work here. Thanks for taking time for us this morning.
Thank you, and we do believe that real reforms will turn this around, and we will become that opportunity state. That's an important message, but thanks for having me on.